Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to this week's edition of All in the Mishpacha. Here, his next stage, marketing with Shlomi Steinmetz brings his storytelling savvy to the Hess concert. This is actually the brother of Mati Steinmetz. Mati Steinmetz is the main performer at the Hess concert, so therefore his brother is taking over and running the entire concert, and they're both taking a 50% cut. That means that no money will go to Hask. I'm joking. No, I don't think he's related to Mati Steinmetz, some Hasidish guy. It was actually an interesting article about this guy, one New Square. You know, I don't know if he went off the derech exactly, but he does a lot of marketing and he's very good at planning big events. So I think he'll be planning the Hask event this year. I want to talk today about this a few minutes with Stu. I guess you pronounce Loser or Lesser. I'm not really sure. You see the nice pictures here of our favorite president, Mr. Joe Biden, and maybe the upcoming president, Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. 2024 is closer than it looks. This guy is someone who helps Democratic potential presidents. He's not intimately involved with Joe Biden, but he did help apparently Clinton win a presidency and almost helped Gore beat Bush in 2000, but he lost narrowly in Florida, and that was his demise. So they ask him a couple questions. This is with Benjamin Rose and Maury Litwack. This is actually the first segment of their new podcast. Mishpacha magazine does podcasts also. If you didn't know that, check them out. I don't know how good it is, but they condensed some of the podcasts into a couple pages over here. They had a couple of questions about Biden, about Trump, about DeSantis. I just want to comment on some of the interview they did. I find it quite comical. I think most people find it quite comical. The first question they asked him is said, based on your presidential campaign experience, can you give us some insight into President Biden's thought process in deciding whether to run again in 2024? Basically, is Joe Biden running again in 2024? He is now 80 years old. In 2 years, he'll probably be 82 years old. That means if he's elected president, he will be 86 years old when he finishes his second term. If he does, they say he answers he's absolutely running, and not only that, but he feels there isn't anyone else in the country who could run. There's no other Democratic candidate. Maybe he's right. There's got to be some alternative to Joe Biden. If I just register as a Democrat, I think I'd do better than Joe Biden. That's number one, he says. Another question he asks over here. Oh, this is funny. He said, by Joe Biden's own definition, this is Stu Loser commenting, he has been the most successful president of almost any of our lifetime. Okay, so I don't know how many people's lifetime. There's different ages brackets of people who read Mishpacha magazine. Let's say my lifetime. I was born in 1982. I think Reagan was president around then. So we got Reagan. We got after Reagan was Bush, Reagan, and then Bush, and then Clinton, and then Bush's son, and then Obama, and then Trump, and now Biden. So that's 6 or 7 presidents. Joe Biden is the best, of course. He has been the most successful. What has he done that's good? No one knows, but he tries to give you a list of some of the things he did. He obviously has his detractors, really. But from bringing chip manufacturing back to the United States, down through climate change programs, right? The world is getting cooler, not any warmer. That's why it has snowed so many times this winter. And his massive infrastructure bill, meaning basically putting the entire country in a huge inflation problem where prices are skyrocketing in America. Doesn't say that. He has arguably been a successful president. According to Joe Biden, he's the best. According to Stu Loser, arguably he could be a successful president and makes him better than probably the rest because they were not very good. Um, I want to talk today. I'm going to talk about tell you a little bit about this article, and then I want to talk about my personal views because you know what? Maybe I got a chance as running a president on the Democratic ticket in 2024 from Jews are normally associated with the Republican Party nowadays. But I'm going to show you that really I align more with Democrat policies. I'm going to go through some of the policies that politicians normally deal with and give you my perspective on some of them. And, obviously my perspective is coming from my background and my knowledge of the Torah, which I don't always see the Torah being aligned with democracy, and my policies would be aligned with democracy, but they're based in the Torah, rooted in the Torah. The last thing he says over here, he says, they asked that many Americans are concerned about President Biden's age and how he has misspoken and seemed disoriented in public. How will that impact his reelection campaign? Well, I mean, the question is if he actually makes it on stage for the next presidential debate, or he just falls down, or he starts trying to shake people's hands that are not there. Maybe he goes over to the crowd and starts shaking their hands. Thinks he's debating people in the crowd. But he said the path to winning any election is the people who are with you no matter what. There's only a small segment of people you can swing. Trump lost those swing voters the second time around. Biden won 2 years ago because he won people over. This is hysterical. The swing voters recognize that no one is perfect. They see Joe Biden as honest, authentic, and imperfect, just as they are imperfect. The way Joe Biden comes across doesn't land the same way among people who support him as it does with people who are inclined to hate him. Joe Biden won the election in 2020 because he, quote unquote, won people over by staying in his basement and drinking hot cocoa, and coming out once in a while to either trip or I'm misspeaking, to make some sort of gaffe. He won people over. I mean, people, were entranced by seeing Joe Biden open his mouth and talk about his firm grasp of American politics, his firm policies, his decision-making ability, his oratorial ability, or being an orator. He was like Obama, basically, So they were very happy with him, and he won people over. That's why he won the election. Now, I don't know exactly what happened in the election. Trump claims it was rigged. I don't know who to believe, honestly, to be honest with you. It's hard for me to imagine anyone lost to Joe Biden. Donald Trump was a pretty good president. He's a pretty likable person to half the country, at least. And did a pretty good job as president, so it's hard to believe that he lost to Joe Biden. Joe Biden won the election. Don't know what happened. I'm not going to get into it. It doesn't really interest me. And I think Donald Trump should be quiet, whether he feels it was rigged or not. It just hurts his cause by keep on. You're not becoming president again by rehashing that you think it was rigged. Well, the courts ruled it wasn't rigged, whether it was rigged or not. For all intents and purposes, you're not going to be president in 2020, 2024. Maybe 2024 you can do it. I think it hurts his cause to keep on talking about it. But I will talk about, since Joe Biden feels there's nobody else to run. So maybe I'll be that person to oppose Joe Biden in the primaries. Not really planning on doing this, but I'd like to discuss some of my policies about American politics because, I'm an opinionated person. If you haven't seen recently, I have a new addition to my channel, Lang for Your Buck News, where I analyze, in one day, five news stories and give you my opinion about them, my point of view in 1 minute or less. Let's start off with two policies that I really support Democrats over Republicans, two flashpoint topics. One, gun control. Republicans are very firm, Donald Trump, about the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. You can't limit gun control, even though we have mass shootings all the time in America. It's terrible what goes on, really. I mean, you don't hear about the type of shootings that go on in America in other countries as much as America. There's at least 3 or 4, 5, 6, sometimes more mass shootings in America. Not even talking about inner city violence that goes on, a lot of neighborhoods which are there's a lot of poverty, where there's a lot of homicides that are not reported or people don't know about. Part of the fact that there's a lot of police brutality is because there's a lot of violence that needs the police to be called and act sometimes in a brutal way. I'm not condoning police brutality. Sometimes they take things overboard. I think that case with George Floyd, the police officer, was brutal over there and killed him by his own volition. Um, but again, I'm a big believer in the police, and you have to give police leeway sometimes, because we're not perfect. And when you're in a life and death situation where the guy's carrying a knife or a gun, you can't be perfect. You have to protect your own life, also protect the life of other people. So you have to be able to have the ability to shoot and the ability to protect other people and yourself. And you have to have leeway when it comes to the president. I think the guy with the police officer with George Floyd might have gone over a little bit, but again, you have to have leeway. I'm not a backer of defund the police. But in terms of gun control, I think most guns should be taken off the street in America. You should not be have able to get your hands on a gun, and certainly not one of these rifles, automatic rifles, or even semi-automatic rifles that can produce these mass shootings. There's no reason you need these things. I understand some people like them for hunting, but I feel that the negative outweighs the positive. Background checks are only so helpful. You could always ask someone else who would pass a background check to buy a gun for you. If guns are available to the masses, you'll find, a mass murderer will find his way to a gun, find a way to get his hands on a gun. I think they have to be taken off the street. What other people say, like Ben Shapiro says, we got to, the purpose of the Second Amendment is not, it's not self-protection, it's not whatever. He says the point is, and that's true, the reason that the people who wrote the Constitution wrote it the right to bear arms, because they were concerned that any government can turn into a tyranny, and they could really overtake the country. You see what Hitler did in Germany, and overtake the government, and you should be able to form, an army, to protect yourselves, a militia to protect yourselves against the tyranny. Even though America is bad, I don't see it being a tyrannical regime in the next 20, 25 years, maybe after that. Um, but there's a way of protecting it against it. I think it's fair in every city or town to have a large storehouse of weapons, rifles, guns, grenades, whatever you need to fight. If, like the Constitution says, there would be some sort of tyranny in the government, be able to fight them. But I don't. I think there should be codes to that storehouse. It should be coded, and most people should have access to it. Only under certain circumstances, someone have access to it. A really responsible person from each town or community should have access to it. Maybe a couple of people, just in case that person's not available. And that person can do a background check. Someone for sure who's not going to be, using the gun to kill people, and also won't be distributing the guns to mass murderers. I think that will shore up a lot of these mass shootings. Although Ben Shapiro says, not the gun that kills, it's the person that kills. Yeah, but if they get their hands on the gun, right, then if they can't get their hands on the gun, they're not going to kill anybody. So it's all semantics what he's saying. It doesn't make a difference. Policy number two, abortion. Um, the Supreme Court, which is Republican, just overturned Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was, federally, you have the right to get an abortion. Some of the states outlawed it. They overturned that. Now, according to the federal government, you don't have the right to an abortion. I don't think that's the right stance. The reason it's called an abortion, abortion is not called killing somebody. Whether you want to say you're killing a fetus or not, it's like killing a person. But again, it's abortion. Abortion means that you're aborting. When you abort, right, you have a dangerous situation. Abort, 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 right? Dangerous situation, right? People are not, men and women are not coming together having children just for the fun of killing the fetus, right? That's not what's going on over here. Every case of abortion is usually either because um, a young girl had intercourse with a man. They didn't plan on having a child. They didn't want to have a child. No one wants to have a baby when you're 16 years old and you're a girl and you're with a guy. You don't want to, not the guy wants, not the girl wants. They want to have the relationship. They don't want to have the child. So it's a dangerous situation because normally they're not going to get married, this couple. There's so much casual intercourse in America. It's rampant. So, well, in the world, I mean, it's rampant. So, These things are going to happen, and the father is not going to marry this woman usually. He's going to leave. So it's going to be a single parent upbringing for this child. The mother is young. She could be 16, 15 years old. She doesn't have a way. She's in high school. She's a freshman or a sophomore or a junior in high school. How is she going to earn money to support her child? It doesn't make any sense. She's not going to be able to do it. She's going to be still living with her parents, the grandmother of the child is going to take care of her. I mean, it's not feasible. And a lot of times these children, because they grew up in a divorced house, in a poor house, these kids are going to turn to drugs. They're going to turn to alcohol or worse things. And those people who commit a lot of crimes, it's just bad for society. It's a bad child. It's a bad child to have. These people did not want to have this child. So you abort the situation, you get rid of the child. I'll talk in a second what I think about whether you're killing the child or not. The other time people would want an abortion, if they do some tests and some ultrasounds and they see there's a problem with the child, there's a birth defect or, some genetic disease, again, to have a child like that as a parent, can undermine your entire family. Even if you have a healthy family, a husband and a wife and a couple of children, and they have a steady income, but dealing with a child with genetic defect, uh, autism, or any of these, or a physical, defect in the body, the kid's in a wheelchair or something like that, the medical bills, the time, the exhaustion on the parents, it weighs so much. It can ruin the parent's life. It's hard enough to bring up healthy children. To bring up children, even one child that has a problem, it'll throw the chemistry and the balance in your life off completely. And it's really hard to deal with, for those parents. I'm sure those parents who go through it know exactly what it is to deal with kids like this, a Down syndrome kid or something like that. It's very difficult. It really throws your life off kilter. And those are two of the main situations why parents would want to have an abortion. Again, aborting an impending disaster. That's what you're doing over here. Now, the people that say abortion is a terrible thing, they equate it with killing a human being. Now, I'm a frum Jew. I'm someone who believes in the Torah. You know, Ben Shapiro also is a frum Jew. He's modern Orthodox. I don't know if he's from. We're discussing over Shabbos whether modern Orthodox people are considered frum people. They're Jewish people, they're observant people. I think frum means you accept extra stringencies upon yourself. So I don't think modern Orthodox people are accepting those stringencies upon themselves. Though nowadays it's a little different. They do daf yomi also. But so the question is whether you're killing the person. According to the Torah, it's not called killing a person because it's not equated. And the Gemara in Ksubos and the Avlam Hey on 35 talks about it. 36 maybe the Gemara talks about when the sugya of Kimle b'derab. And the pasuk in the Torah, it's quoting a pasuk in the Torah that if someone goes ahead and hits a woman who's pregnant, right? if the mother dies, so then you don't pay for the child. The child has value to the father. The father owns the child. So you don't pay for the value of the child because Kim Ledrama, you killed the mother. So therefore you only get punished with the worst one, which is Misa, which, you get hereg, you get beheaded according to the strict understanding of the Torah. But if you don't kill the mother, there's just a miscarriage. You cause a miscarriage by hitting her stomach. So then you just pay money. You pay monetarily because if it was like killing somebody, then you also wouldn't pay monetarily because, right, the Chiyav Misa for killing the fetus would be the same thing as killing the mother. But it's not, clearly according to the Torah. In fact, the poskim struggled to find any Isser with this. It's really seemingly from the Gemara, the strict interpretation of the Torah. A pasuk in the Torah and the actual Gemara is that it's only a financial obligation. And when it's your child, when it's the father agrees to do the abortion, I'm allowed to take, right, my money, my possession, my shirt, my new sweater over here, my Monaco sweater, and throw it in the river if I want. It's my money, right? So I could do that. So the same thing in abortion. You're not even losing. You're not even responsible financially for doing that because it's your own kid. The mother does it against the father's rights. So maybe according to the Torah there'll be restitution. But again, this is democracy. We're not talking according to the Torah. But my belief is similar to that of the Torah that you can't compare a human life after the baby is born to the status of the fetus while it's in the mother's womb, right? It's a totally different experience of life, right? Yes, the heart does beat in the fetus, but at the same time, the baby doesn't breathe until it comes born. There's no breathing over there. The way it's fed, right? It's fed through the mother, through the placenta. It's not fed through the mouth, you know. It's the nutrition is different. The breathing is different. Um, it's not a person. It's not in the world, you know. So I'm not going to say it's killing or not killing, you know, without using the Torah. If I was using the Torah, I would say it's not killing because it's not killing according to the Torah. But if I'm not going to use the Torah, I'm going to say it's at best a doubt, right? So we're doubtful, right? It's a doubt, 50-50, let's say. There's no way of figuring this out. You can debate it from today till tomorrow, whether you consider the fetus like a human being or not a human being. In some aspects, it's like a human being. It has a heartbeat. You know, maybe it has sensory feelings. We don't know what a baby feels. I mean, I don't remember anything when I was a fetus. I don't remember feeling anything, to be honest with you. And I'm sure there were times that I should have felt something. It was cold outside, or someone hit my mother's stomach by accident, or she hit into the wall or something. I don't know, but I didn't feel anything. I don't remember feeling anything. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but I don't remember it. So there's definitely less sensory experience when you're a fetus. So at best, it's a doubt whether it's considered to be actual human life at that point. So when you're in doubt over that, and you have for sure a detrimental situation if the baby is born, right? There's a very detrimental situation of born because, again, most of the cases of abortion, either it's a case of a young boy and girl have a good child, in which case the child's going to be growing up in a single parent home in poverty, exposed to a lot of bad things, probably going in drugs and maybe killing other people. Or you're going to have someone, with genetic diseases who is going to burden a family financially and logistically so much that it's going to take away the peace of mind of the parents and ruin their lives. So, when you're talking about the Torah talks about when you have a vadai and a suffix, when you have something for sure and you have a doubt, you go with what's known, what's for sure. And for sure, there's very detrimental side to having the child. So when you're in doubt whether you're actually killing the child or even causing it pain, you go with the surety. You go with the thing that's for sure, and you don't go with the doubt. That's my opinion about abortion. And that those two ways, I'm Democratic. Now, let's talk about some other Democratic policies because I'm running against Joe Biden. I have to know what to debate him in the primaries. The good questions to ask him. Ask him. If he remembers what his name is, could he spell his name? Joe Biden, Gai, Byddo, Brandon. Is your name Brandon? Joe. I'll have a walk straight. Without the alcohol. I'll put a line in front of him. Walk straight. This line without dripping. We'll have a contest, me and Joe. Anyway, so let's get back to some of the other policies which are more progressive. Democrats are always considered progressive. Republicans are conservative. From Jews are, right, considered conservative. Are they? I mean, there is a branch of Judaism called conservative Judaism. Most from Jews do not align themselves with conservative Judaism. The correct, and the correct way of assessing from Judaism, Hamish Judaism, even in America, is progressive. The Shulchan Aruch is a progressive thing. Shulchan Aruch didn't exist. You look at the Nevi'im, you look back, David HaMelech and Shoftim and all those things, they didn't talk about halacha because before the end of the second Beis Hamikdash, the era right before the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash, where it's recorded the machlokas b'tzilim beit Shammai, the first time we machlokas, right? Because until then, every halacha was very simple. Like the Gemara says, koach l'Torah adif. You had two opinions, you go with the more lenient. Only towards the end, the structure of the second Beis Hamikdash, when there was fighting, right? That's what machlokas. That's what sinas chinam. That's what killed the Beis Hamikdash. That's what destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, and as kept the Beis Hamikdash not being rebuilt for the past 2,000 years, is the machlokas, and there's a machlokas and halacha, and that's because people refused to be mekel. They refused to go with the lenient opinion, which is obviously what happened in the time of David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech. They just wanted the lenient opinion. There was no discussions about it. There's no machlokas. They had opinions, but they just went with the lenient opinion until it got confused and Rebbe started writing down the Mishnayos, and then it got even more confusing because written word is dead, right? Even Rebbe who wrote down the word, I believe oral Torah is the right Torah. You know, Eis lasses Hashem heferus arasecha, like we talk about in the Durham, being mefer and neder, blocking a neder. Hafara is temporary, but the real way the Torah is supposed to be like watching on YouTube, where I give it to you orally, and I don't write it down because written words are dead. You can't argue with them, you can't debate them, and that's a big problem. So, Judaism that I follow, and most from Jews follow, is progressive. Following Shulchan Aruch is a progressive idea. So, we're really democratically following the Torah in terms of defining Democrats as progressives and Republicans as conservatives. In terms of Judaism, we're really progressives. Really, the reason I believe that it's important to follow the Shulchan Aruch is because it gives you a structure in life. Once we lost clarity of the Torah and it became so confusing that it was written down in Rebbe, and we have all the Gemaras, and that's what we have. This is the Talmud. This is what we have. So this is the best. This is our way of preserving the heritage. I don't really believe. I don't know if I believe that the Torah should be done, Yari Val Yavar. If you don't keep this halacha of tying your right shoe before your left shoe, then, the world's over for you. In Saudi Arabia, they bent the rules to accommodate Cristiano Ronaldo, usually according to Arab law, in Saudi Arabia at least. You have to be married for a man and woman to live together. He's not married to his girlfriend. They bent the rules because, they paid 1.3 billion, possibly euros, for him to be an ambassador for the country of Saudi Arabia, and for also their citizens to enjoy a great sports figure, a great soccer player. So sometimes you bend the rules. I don't believe in fundamentalism. I don't believe in literalism of the Torah. And as people who listen to many of my shiurim, I offer my Ian shiurim on almost everything I give, because I believe there's a lot of more depth that meets the eye to the Torah. You can't accept the Torah in a fundamentalist way, a literalist way. And that's what the Shulchan Aruch really did. The Shulchan Aruch really took Gemaras. Everyone agrees there's two parts to the Gemara. There's the Agadata on the Gemara, and then there's, the halacha of the Gemara. The halacha is meant to be taken strictly, literally, and the Agadata, we have no idea what it's saying, so we look at the Marsha, and we say, whatever the Marsha says is close to, we know the Marsha is not always right, so we say we can't understand the Agadata. We don't understand the Agadata, but halacha, we understand. Whatever. The problem is that a lot of times the Shulchan Aruch paskins from the Agadata, because Agadatas are intertwined in the halacha Gemaras. The Gemara brings proofs from Agadatas to halachas, so it's ultimately intertwined. So if you can say Agadata is not literal, you have to say the halacha is not literal. Also, the Shulchan Aruch interprets halacha in a literal way. All the poskim interpret it in a literal way. So you have to take it with a grain of salt and say, yes, even though the Shulchan Aruch says something, under certain circumstances, you don't have to follow that halacha. You can bend the halacha, because the real truth of the matter is that we don't understand the Torah right now. Hopefully, the Moshe Mashiach will understand it. We'll understand that literalism is not meant, right? We're not Amelia Bedelia. People who follow the Shulchan Aruch like that, really is really Amelia Bedelia. That's really what it is. It's fundamentalism. It's literalism, and people who follow other religions, the Quran and things like that, with literalism, those other religions, it could be potentially dangerous with jihad and things like that. So I don't believe any religious text should be followed in a literalist way. Whatever religion you're subscribing to, there's always depth to it. So therefore, as I mentioned, Jews, as we are now, from Jews are really democratic in terms of their acceptance of the Torah. We accept the Torah in a progressive type of way, not in terms of a conservative way. Otherwise, you'd be going to conservative shuls. So some of the other policies that Democrats talk about, climate change, changing over to electric vehicles and things like that. I have to say that although I think it's a little extreme, some of the policies to worry about climate change in such a radical way, when Biden cut off the Keystone Pipeline, I think it was a big mistake. Under Trump, America had finally become independent energy-wise from dependence on other nations, and Biden reversed course drastically right away. I don't think it has to be so drastic, but the world is tending towards a cleaner system with electric vehicles I think it was a mistake. There was even a conference at the White House under the Biden presidency where he took, a conference about electric vehicles, and he invited, Ford, General Motors, um, to the conference, who have limited, electric vehicle capacity, and didn't invite Tesla. And Elon Musk was a little baffled that he didn't invite him. And I think that's, doing that to Elon Musk. You don't like Elon Musk because he represents free speech and he represents some of um, the Republican views. But at the same time, if you're truly trying to help America and believe in your infrastructure program that you spent trillions of dollars on in order to get America to build back better, cleaner, cleaner energy, more green. You got to invite Elon Musk to your electronic vehicle conference. So I do believe the future of cars is EVs, electric vehicles, which will ultimately make the country cleaner. But I don't think, there's this woman from Sweden, young girl, Greta Thunberg, was recently in the news with Andrew Tate, or spate with Andrew Tate, which ultimately landed Andrew Tate in jail in Romania. I think she's a little extreme, telling people not to go on flights, not to fly anymore because it takes up so much fuel and it ruins the atmosphere, the carbon emissions. It has to be done in a slow way, and it has to be affordable for the average American. To say everyone should buy a Tesla when people can't afford Teslas is not realistic and not practical. And his infrastructure bill, I think, was too drastic and spent too much money. And you're seeing the inflation, the rampant inflation going on in America, which is destroying people's lives. So I think that was too drastic what he did with the climate change. Although I do believe some aspects of climate change are good. I don't think electric vehicles. The only reason it's good is because it helps the environment. I think they're good because it saves people financially on gas. The technology of the Teslas are much nicer than the other one. I want to buy. I want to buy. I don't have a car. I want to buy a Tesla. If I bought a car, if I had the money, because it's cool. It has a big computer screen. It's connected to the internet, which connected to his Starlink system, of internet access throughout the world. Um, and also you save money with the gasoline, but that's not necessarily the main reason I would want it. Um, but it has to be a slow transition, not crazy transition. Only solar energy, only wind turbines, and only electric vehicles. It has to be something practical, and it'll take a long time. And you shouldn't be spending so much money so quickly. What they say that maybe in 100 years the temperature, the average temperature will increase by 2 degrees Celsius. I mean, that's maybe it will, maybe it won't. It's not clear that it will. Even if you say that it's clear that it will, according to the scientists, I mean, is that really going to destroy the world? I mean, it'll take maybe 1,000 years before the world is possibly destroyed from the sun. So I think we have to worry about what's in front of us as opposed to worrying about great grandchildren. You worry about your great grandchildren, but yourselves you're not caring about. You're not caring about. You're gonna devastate your lives. You're gonna have rampant inflation. You're not be able to spend money. You're gonna ruin your own life. So in 1,000 years, humanity will be better. At some point, you have to say you have to worry about yourself. So I agree with the climate policy in theory, but not for all the reasons that they agree with. As I mentioned, police funding, defund the police. I don't know that all Democrats hold like that. I think that the police should be strengthened wherever it's possible. Police officers, you know, I don't know if there's racial profiling in certain communities or not. I imagine that in some places there is white supremacy and there is mistreatment of blacks. Unfortunately, a lot of African Americans are in communities with a lot of poverty and a lot of drugs and a lot of violence, and white police officers are a lot of times called in to intervene. Um, and whether they have racism against blacks, I'm sure there are some people who are racist against black people, and they overdo it a little bit. But again, I think you have to give the benefit out to the police because they keep everyone safe. You're seeing it even in New York. People, there's just an uptick in crime, and people want someone who's going to keep the state and the city secure. And because ultimately that's the most important thing besides the fact earning money. You have to be safe, maybe even more. You want to be able to walk the streets at night and not be attacked by somebody who's gonna take your money or your purse or do something worse to you. So that's fundamental to a society that the police should protect you. Um, in terms of some of the other policies, the migrant policies at the border, Donald Trump erecting the wall. Um, of course, what's going on now with the rampant influx of of people from Mexico and other countries in Central and South America. Um, I think the wall was a great idea by Trump. I happen to agree with him. Um, it's really these are people are not citizens of America. If you're some other country in Europe and you want to immigrate to America, it's not an easy process. It's not so easy just to get American citizenship. These people are pouring across the border. They're undercutting Americans who have been Americans for many years from their jobs. They're lowering, right? They're lowering wages because of the competition. They're, you know, hurting welfare programs that America has because a lot of the taxpayers' dollars have to go into the welfare of these new migrants that are coming across the border illegally, and to offer them asylum. I don't know how terrible it is, the regime in Mexico, what exactly the asylum is. I don't know the specifics. I imagine, Biden compared it the other day to what Hitler was doing to the Jews, the asylum that the people in Mexico are seeking when coming across the border. They're running away from Hitler. I'm not aware there's a Hitler in Mexico. So, immigrants, I believe in a wall would be a great thing. What Trump was doing, um, yes, there are extenuating circumstances. In some cases, you should let these migrants come across the border. In most of the cases, I think there should be a wall, or at least a harsher position on the migrants. Um, Trying to think of any other policies that play important role in these campaigns. The last thing I'll talk about is foreign policy. You know, Biden has done with Ukraine and Russia. I have to say, at the end of the day, when the war started in Russia and Ukraine, I said, listen, my theory throughout has been like this: that if you legitimately think that Russia is not just going after Ukraine, they're gonna, threaten the world. They're gonna take Ukraine. They wanted to take Ukraine quickly. They'll take other countries in Eastern Europe. There'll be aggressors. There'll be like the former Soviet Union. They'll take over the world. If that really was what the, world leaders felt, that Biden felt, I don't know if Biden's running the country. Yeah, maybe some the people advisors in his cabinet are running the country. But whoever's running the country, if they felt legitimately that was happening, so I agree. Step up your aid to try to help Ukraine, and that's probably what they felt. I don't think personally. I don't think Putin is after more than just Ukraine. I think he's happy with Ukraine. Ukraine was posing, if they would join NATO, it would be like a wall against Putin. I think he wanted to avert that. I don't think he's someone that's like Napoleon trying to conquer the world. So personally, I wouldn't have helped out Ukraine with the aid, but it turns out that the aid actually was critical in terms of what Ukraine is able to withstand the Russian invasion. Russia still has conquered 15% of Ukrainian territory at this point, but they've averted disaster, and it could be they're on the counteroffensive. And it's kind of scary, though, what this might lead to, because Putin really is a wild card, and it could be that Putin, if Putin loses this war, he's going down, and they're going to hang him. They're going to, Russia will hang him, and the world will hang him for the war crimes that he's committing in Ukraine. And if he goes down, so, he's a crazy, like, he's a wild card. You don't know what Putin's going to do. Putin, if he says something, he's likely to do it. And even if he hints at something, he's likely to do it. He's hinted at nuclear warfare. I hope, for the sake of the world, he doesn't resort to that. I don't know a way out of this situation. I hope they have some sort of agreement between Russia and Ukraine where they work something out, and they have some sort of peace agreement or ceasefire, and this ends in a peaceful way. But if Putin is backed against the wall and he's going out, like Samson, he pulled down the building on the Palestinians, and so Shoftim and judges. Tammuz Nafshi and Plishtim. I don't know what he's going to do with nuclear capacities. It's scary to think about it. But I have to say that even though I don't believe it was the right thing to aid Ukraine, it has helped. The way they've done it has actually been very good. They gave a little bit, a little more. They didn't do a huge amount or very sophisticated weapons in the beginning, which would have prompted a response by Putin to the rest of the world. So Putin really had no recourse. The way it was done was very smart to give aid to Ukraine. It's really helped Ukraine. This is really the foreign policy that Biden's been dealing with for most of his presidency. So he hasn't done so bad about it. Again, I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have. And the second part is that it never would have started, right? The only country that Russia fears is the United States. They don't fear any other country in Europe. Because Biden is a weak president, he projects. I mean, he doesn't project anything. He's definitely very a weak president. So if there was someone like Trump who was a strong president, Putin would never have done it on Trump's watch. It's obvious he never would have done it. The only reason he's able to do this, and the only reason China threatens Taiwan right now, and this magazine is talking about perhaps they see in 2023 China is gonna try to take over Taiwan. Um, it's only because Biden projects as a weak president. Any strong president in the United States, um, some Democrats are strong, some are not. I don't know, Republicans I think generally project as a stronger personality, stronger persona. If I would be Democrat, I'm pretty strong personality, maybe the strongest in the world. So we have no problems with Russia or China. As long as you're strong and you can threaten, and potentially the enemies know you could back up your threat. You prove in small instances that you will back up your threat. They're not going to do anything on your watch. So I think because of the weakness of Biden as president, that's why Russia invaded Ukraine. The response I don't agree with, but the way they did the response was good. Again, I hope Putin doesn't retaliate when he's going down. Um, China and Taiwan, I don't know what's going to be in the next 2 years, whether they're going to invade Taiwan or not. I think it was wrong for Pelosi to go Taiwan and um, rile up China by doing that, threaten China by doing that. And again, in general, I think foreign policy of America, of any country, should be, your country first, America first policy that Trump had. I agree with that policy. You should worry about your country first. You shouldn't be worrying about, having democratic Taiwan around, or having Ukraine, which I don't know what type of government. I think it's democracy, maybe. I don't know. Even Trump said it's one of the most corrupt countries in the world, Ukraine, much more corrupt than Russia itself. So, at the end of the day, I think, as in foreign policy, America first. That's why Trump wanted to withdraw from Afghanistan. I think it was stupid to be in Afghanistan. Why do you have to meddle in other countries' politics? Leave them alone. You're spending a lot of money from your government, which taxpayers have to pay for. You're sending American soldiers to foreign soil where a lot of them are killed, unfortunately, and waste years of their lives doing absolutely nothing. And once they leave, you saw what happened in Afghanistan. I mean, it was terrible the way Biden withdrew because of his weakness as a persona. That was a weak withdrawal from Afghanistan, and people died. It was terrible what happened in Afghanistan. But you shouldn't be involved in. I think Trump was right in getting out of these soldiers out of all these places. Biden did, withdraw from Afghanistan. The way he did it was terrible because of his weak personality. But I think in foreign policy, I think to stay out of it. So I would agree with the Republicans more. They try to stay out. I'm not familiar with other Republican presidents prior to Trump, whether they were involved in foreign policy. But I think Bush was involved in sending troops overseas. But whether you're Republican or Democrat, I'm not in favor of that. I believe unless it's really extenuating circumstances, they threaten some American consulate in some other country, or they threaten something close to citizens of American citizens, or they're on the border of a territory owned by America, or it's potentially dangerous for that territory, and you have to protect that territory as a part of your country. So then there's a reason to send soldiers there and try to protect it militarily. Otherwise, mind your own business in foreign policy. Stay out of it. Don't get involved in other countries' business. Because what's the point? You want to conquer the world. You want to spread democracy to the world. No one's going to listen to you. People will do what they want to do. You're not going to be able to teach people democracy that don't want democracy, right? And you're not going to be able to teach Afghanistan soldiers how to fight wars and then leave. They don't care. They're living in Afghanistan and not United States citizens. So stay out of there. Stay out of foreign policy. That was my recommendation, which I guess tends toward more Trump. I don't know if all Republicans would say the same thing, but that's a summary of the main policies that I have to offer. Um, when I do run for president of the United States, I will be running on a Democratic ticket. I really will align more with Democratic policies, as I mentioned. I believe the current form of Judaism aligns more with democratic progressive values, which is not a bad thing, right? Progressivism just means that you're changing things. Conservative means you really have to bring a strong burden of proof to change things. I think the reason I agree with progressive values more is because a lot of times the context that certain things, the laws were made in, doesn't apply anymore. And that calls for progressivism. It calls to change what was old, and you're talking about the right to bear arms, gun control, or something like that. And no one envisioned, the rampant amount, the way guns are being used today and distributed today, the different people and the mass murders. I don't think they had these mass murders, 200 years ago, 250 years ago when the Constitution was written. So societies change, culture changes, and the laws should be changing also. If the context doesn't apply to the law anymore, the law has to change. So a lot of these progressive policies, um, a lot of progressive policies, call for change because it's a different society. So just to hold to your conservative policies because that's the status quo and that's what it was, unless you can strongly, prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, I don't necessarily agree with. We'll talk more about other policies, smaller policies, at a different time. But I wanted to weigh in on what my political policies would be in America if I were elected as the Democratic nominee for the next presidency against Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. That would be a great debate. Me against Donald Trump. That would be pretty good, right? Who would win? I'll leave it for you to think about. Hope you enjoyed. See you next week.